All right, today we're going to be talking about the mouse chop. Just by way of overview, what this does is this is going to register your cursor's position in screen space. Let me activate this, and it will give you your Y position and X position. Let me not do that. So you can see as my mouse moves up in the Y, my Y channel, that's the yellow one, moves up and down, so it's registering, and the same with the orange channel, which represents the X value. Those just get registered in screen space. If you're using a tablet, you get several other channels: your pressure, angle, tilt, roll, and your cursor's position. I'll go over these. I'll touch on these a little bit and show you maybe how to use one of those. A couple gotchas with this chop. When your cursor goes from one pane to the next, particularly this one at the bottom, you're going to get a jump in values. I think you should be able to see that's actually my Y value kind of getting messed up, and my X value is getting messed up there as well. I don't think this is the intention of how this should work. This should work from your entire screen space minus your taskbar and your menu bar and taskbar. But again, I think it's just a quirk with it. It's how it is. I don't think it's how it should be. So we're just going to do our best to just work around that. Again, if you are using a tablet, you get these other channels for free. Let me switch over to my tablet and I'll see if any of those start registering. You can drop down and delete, because I want to isolate a couple of these channels. And I'm also going to throw it on a record so we can actually get a better view of what's happening. I'm going to delete everything but my pressure channel. Okay, and you can see something's registering there. Let me hit space bar and H to get just to kind of home this in. And a quirky thing about the pressure, it defaults, like when your pen isn't making contact with your tablet, that is going to register a 1 value. But as soon as you touch, it jumps down to 0 because your pressure, it's 0. Like when you make a light touch on your tablet, it's registering little pressure, and then as you push more, it goes all the way up to 1. That can be problematic because you don't always have your pen in contact with your tablet, and if you're going to use this to drive anything, it's just something that you'll need to be aware of. Just because I have it here, let me go ahead and record this and show you what it looks like. So as I'm giving more pressure to my pen, I'm registering that curve, and it clamps out at 1. That's the highest level of pressure. Let me also add back in let me get my X and Y values, and then you'll see that as I record, I'm also getting those 2 channels. Let me stop this, hit H, and you can see those were my X and Y coordinate values. So that's the quick overview of what the mouse chop does. Now you can take these values and you can filter them any way that chops will allow you to do that, and then you can select those channels and drive pretty much any parameter you could think of in Houdini with this information. And so what I'll do next is show you a couple examples that I came up with that were somewhat interesting to build out and fun to play with, and I'll very quickly talk through how those were built, and then I'll build up the chop network to drive those parameters. Alright, so this is a really recognizable effect. It's also pretty fun to build. What I like about it is it reminds me a lot of the feel that you get if you've ever sat at an audio console and you've just slowly used a fader to crank a volume or fade down audio, how tactile that feels. And it's this just in a similar way, that's what my mouse feels like here. Just using this to, I'm really not scrubbing through animation so much as driving a couple parameters. So I'm going to show you how, really quickly, how the SOP network was built up from this, and then I'll rebuild the chop network. So let me hop out of my my viewer camera and show you what this looks like from just from a different point of view. So yeah, that's it. It's just a bunch of lines that get scaled and the camera pushes through them. And I also have I have in my viewport settings, I just hit the D key to bring up this menu. And in my fog settings, I have bloom turned on. That's just because it felt like it needed it, and it's kind of fun to see in the viewport. So that's it. I'm gonna, just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna step through my setup. I'm actually gonna get back out of that camera. So how this was built is really straightforward. I took a box and I sized that to fill the view of the camera that I had. Then I filled that with points by using the points to volume, or points from volume. Ultimately, ultimately the goal was to clone these lines onto it, or copy this single line onto each of those points. I packed these points so that makes it really performant, which is pretty light anyway. It's not a ton of copies, and it's just a simple line. That line's set in Z-space. To vary the length of those, I set up a random p-scale attribute using the attribute randomize. Also, this is what I'm driving in with my mouse. Eventually, I'm driving this the scale value. So that's where the part of the animation is coming from. And the only other thing that I did in this setup was I wanted to have that like gradient of like that teal colored, blue colored gradient. To get there, I did another attribute randomize, and I just did a random color, and then in a wrangle, I mapped the random red channel. You know, if you do an attribute randomize on your color, you get random values across your RGB channels for those color values. So I took the random red value and copied that over to the green and blue, so that I got just a random grayscale. And that's just, I said my color equals the X channel of my color, which is the X channel is the red. I could have also put R, it wouldn't be the same. I for whatever reason, I just always refer to my color channels as XYZ. And then at the end of my chain here, I took a color stop, and I do this a lot. I set this to ramp from attribute, and the attribute that I'm ramping over is my color, because I had a random grayscale value. So random values 0 to 1, and I'm mapping this gradient on top of those. So that's the SOP setup, and now I will show you, or rebuild rather, the chop network by making myself a chop net. Just call this mouse. Hop in here, and I'm going to put down a mouse chop. I'm going to open, I had my window split left right, so that I could see these values. So my mouse chop, what I've got is my X channel and Y channel. For this effect, I don't even need my X channel, so I'm just going to delete that. And my Y channel, I'm going to rename to Y. And this color may be hard to read on screen, so I'm going to change that color. I think yellows probably read maybe a little bit better. As long as it's bright, I think it'll read pretty well. So that's my Y channel that's coming from this viewport. Ultimately, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to drive it from this viewport, like from my camera. So let's just hop into my camera. And the reason I'm doing this is because those pops in the value that we've been talking about, when you look through your camera, you get those seemingly at more random places. So I just need to find out where these jumps are happening, and avoid having my mouse go that far down into them. All right, so it looks like negative 0.45, or actually maybe negative 0.5 on the low side, and on the high side that jump is happening right around maybe like 0.25, which is, I don't really know how to make sense of this stuff, but I just know that it happens, so I'm going to try to deal with it. And the way we deal with it is with a math chop. I'm going to remap my values, which I would need to remap them anyway to get those into values that would make sense for p-scale. So in my math chop, go over to range, and I think I decided that it was negative 0.5 to, what was it, 0.3? Is that right? So, and I want to, right, that's being remapped from negative 5.30 to 1. My p-scale values, I know from building this out before, was 0.02 to 1 is fine. Let me just double check these values. 0.5 on the low end, is that what I have? Yep, negative 0.5 on the low end, and on the high end, yeah, probably 0.25. And we will see if that's going to work for us. I'm going to drop down a null. I'm going to call this mouse out. Okay. And now I'm going to reference the that channel into my my p-scale. I'm going to hop up to my SOP level, highlight my attribute randomize, and the quickest way to reference these chops that I found is just to grab the name of your channel, and then just drag and drop that onto the parameter that you want to drive, and you can select any of these options. You're going to want either a chop reference or a relative chop reference. I just did a relative this time. Let me look through my camera. Actually, let me just see how this looks out here. So there's a jump, but I just won't go that far, I guess. It really feels like, depending on what you have selected over here, some of the options that show up here are gonna mess you up, and it also feels like there are jumps. There's a different jump here at the bottom of this view based on whether you're in your camera or not, because right there at the edge of that raster there's a jump when I'm looking through my camera, but when I'm not, it keeps going. So there are definitely some quirks here, but I mean, on a basic level, that's doing what I want it to do. The last piece of this is that we need to two things actually. I want to put down a limit because I don't want these values, because right here you can see my the scale of my lines is starting to go into negative territory, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is limit that to these same values, because this is now, because it's in line after this math chop, it's limiting my p-scale value, and I know what those are. So I'm going to put this to clamp 0.2, and I'll just give myself a little bit of headroom on the high side just in case. And now those definitely stop. Let me actually make this 0.1 and 0.1. Yeah. All right, that's working. And then the last thing I need to do, let me get out so you can actually see something. You're not just seeing a couple points. The last thing I need to do is I need to remap the Z position of this camera as well. I'm going to do that with the same mouse input. We don't have two mice connected to our computer, but I am going to need a different minimum and maximum final values. I know from setting this up earlier, it's -6 to I think around a +2. And then I'm going to merge these two channels together. So I can still just reference my one null. So I'm going to put a merge. Just like in Sopland, you can merge stuff together this way. It's the same in chops. So now if you look in your motion effects view, you have two channels here. One from this stream, one from this stream. And what's happening though is because our incoming channel, this Y, that's what it's named. It's named the same in both streams. So as a convenience, what Houdini has done is it's on the secondary one, it's added a 1 to the end because you can't have two channels named the same thing. But for clarity's sake, I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to rename it I'm going to get rid of this wildcard. This, when you're renaming, if you have more than one chop coming in, that wildcard can mess you up because it will rename everything. It'll rename everything from whatever it is to whatever you tell it to, and you can just run into issues if you aren't pretty explicit with this. So I'm going to rename my Y channel to cam Z, and now on this null I can see that I have my Y channel and I have my cam Z. I'm going to hop up all the way to my object level, grab my camera, and drag and drop that into my Z channel. And now you can see my camera is doing exactly what it should, and there's our effect. I'm not getting any jumping, and that's exactly what I want. And this is, again, who knows if this would be particularly useful in any given project. It is fun to play with, and lately, a lot of this comes from doing some experimenting in Touch Designer and just trying to stretch myself and learn new things and dip into different softwares. And if you can get your head into this state of just experimenting and having fun and playing around, I think that's good for us as artists. So that's, a lot of the questions are like, how is this useful? And my answer is, I don't know that it is, but it is making me think about things differently, and it's just fun to do. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. And the second thing I'm going to show is how to use the tablet with the same XY channels, but also with pressure, to give our favorite test geometry Tommy, give him something to look at and show you how to blink his eyes. So let me get that up. All right, here's Tommy. He looks excited, and what I've got here, this probably looks maybe more scary than it is. It's not. This is my early tests, and I'll break away from this and actually rebuild it and show you. And it is a bit more complicated than the Hyperspace example, but really not very much. And it's still, it's nothing crazy. So what I'm doing is driving his eyes with X and Y position of my tablet position, or my tablet's position. My cursor's position being driven by my Wacom tablet, and his eyes is just a blend shape that is being driven by the pressure of my pen. So let me pause these, make sure I got these turned off, and I'll walk through quickly the SOP setup of this, and then I'll reset up the chop. This dude is jacked. It's like the funniest test geometry. So anyway, I brought in Tommy, and then I blasted his eyes out. Okay, so just deleted. Conveniently, this has groups, so I just deleted delete non-selected. I just selected his eyes. Let's see, I'll deal with this here in a minute. This is just my blend shape for his blinks. Alright, so I've got his eyes here. Where is that? This is what's being driven. I'm just gonna make myself a copy in case I get lost here. This one, I'm freewheeling a little bit more on this one than the Hyperspace one. But at any rate, these are just two primitive spheres that I'm using as look at objects for his eyes. So I've got them probably a little bit too far apart from one another. That's all right. This is just to play around anyway. So I've got a look at like a target here, his blasted eyes there. Let me center this up a little bit. And what I guess the thing that makes this work is this look at. this look at setup that I actually when I was trying to figure out how to get things to objects to look in one direction. There are some shelf tools to do that, but it does it all on the object level, not the SOP level. So I found that in VOPs there's this look at VOP, and I found an example file of how to use it on OddForce. I'll post a link to this in the description. So this user John 3D, how long ago? And back in 2018, posted this VOP setup, which is really simple and really nice. I actually didn't when I just dropped this down, I didn't understand the matrix to quaternion, and then how to I didn't realize that you needed to create an orient attribute from that. So that post from OddForce was really helpful. You can grab that file and use for yours as well. So what I did was I needed to have just 2 points. This geometry has many points. So I put a connectivity there to give it a class attribute based on point connectivity. And then I used an assemble SOP to create packed geometry. So now I just have, if it's going to show me, it might not show me. It's okay. I just have I'll do this, 2 packed geos, so one for each eye. And then what I did was I fed those 2 points into this point VOP. I'm pulling the position attribute from the second input, which is, again, these are just primitive spheres. So basically these are just 2 points in space represented by spheres. And I'm feeding those into my second input of this VOP. And the look at is very simple. It says what are you looking from and what are you looking to? And so my 2 is the 2 spheres. To get it to iterate over both those, you have to feed it their point number. This is the point number of your incoming geometry, which is the first input, my eyeballs. So basically 0.0 on this one is matching 0.0 on this one, or looking at 0.0 on this one, and the 0.1 is looking at 0.1 on this. So you got 2 eyes in, you got 2 eyes on your look at object, and then it's generating an orient attribute. And then I'm feeding that orient attribute into this copy to points. And what I'm doing is I'm just using one eye. I've transformed it a little bit because it was actually pointing the wrong direction for whatever reason. And then I'm copying with this. Again, this may look more confusing than it is. I'll put this file up on Gumroad and people can grab it if they want, just as a free file. But what this is doing is it's orienting. This has 2 points coming out, and that's all there is. This just has 2 packed fragments coming out, which is 2 points. And so now I'm copying this, the original eye, copying that onto these 2 points, and they're being their orientation is being driven by that look at VOP. So you can see as I move this around, let me get it closer. As I get this, as I'm moving these around, my eye positions are changing. This isn't really a tutorial on the look at VOP. I just wanted to explain what was going on. And then I have blend shape for his blinks. This is him with no eyes. And there. So he's just blinking. All I've done is in an edit, I just selected some loops of his eyelids, closed them, and I'm feeding that into a blend shape, and then I merge his eyes and the eyes and the blend shape back together. And here we go. He's looking around. All right. Turn off my wireframe. And that's all there is to the look at. And then from that point, all I'm doing is taking a few values similarly to what we did in the last example of the hyperspace thing. I really want to see that. Oops. It's kind of funny to see him go cross-eyed. So these look-ats, it's kind of weird. Like they're not where you would think they would need to be for the eyes to look right. So I just adjust those to look right. And then I think just because I'm going a little bit long here, rather than rebuilding this, I'm just going to show what I've done. This was an early test, so I don't even need that or this. So all I've done is I've got my mouse chop here. I have it set to where's my parameters? I have the X and Y channel renamed to X and Y, and I'm using a tablet, so I have that tablet checked. I'm not using pressure. I am using my pressure. I'm not using angle, tilt, or cursor or anything like that. These 3 streams, I'm just being really explicit, and this is my Y channel, so I'm deleting the non-scoped version. So I'm taking my Y cursor value. This mouse chop isn't on, so let me turn that on. I'm taking my Y value and remapping it. I'm actually limiting it first so that I don't cross any of those. Again, like, you know, when you cross the pane, I get some jumps. So what I did in this case was, rather than limiting it after the fact, I'm limiting it before the fact. So this limit, you know, in my last version, I just limited the final channel, but now I'm limiting the incoming channel. So when this hits the break point, or just before the break point, it won't go any further. So I won't deal with any jumps in this setup, which is actually what I should have done in the last setup. And then I'm remapping that to values that make sense for the look at object. Then I do this exact same thing with the X channel. So that was my Y channel. This is my X channel. You know, I've got it limited to where that needs to be. Let's see. Yep. Actually, I need to lower this limit. Yeah, that's fine. And I never hit the minimum on that side. You don't run into any errors jumping any frames on your left. And then for the pressure, which is this channel, I've just isolated the pressure of my tablet. I think I mentioned it before, but the pressure, it has this weird jump when you first make contact with your graphics tablet. So just be aware of that. What I do is I kind of lightly touch it, and then just keep contact and kind of drive it that way. And I'm remapping that value. I'm not limiting this. It has a hard limit anyway. Yeah, so I am inverting this range. So I want my minimum pressure. The minimum pressure I want to be the maximum value, and my maximum pressure I want to be the minimum value. And that's just based on the way my blend shapes are set up. So let me show you that. So I highlight this out, and then I'll hop up to my object level, or my SOP setup, and I'm gonna grab just hit home here. I'm actually gonna disable this mouse just for a second. Just turn that off, and when it's off, it still generates the channels. It doesn't update. So I'm gonna take my X channel and put that in my translate X. I'm going to do a relative chop reference. I'm going to do the same thing with the Y value, relative chop reference, and my pressure, I'm going to map that in my blend strength here, and relative chop reference. And now if I turn this mouse back on, yeah, I'm getting some crazy looking stuff. And I think the reason that he's looking so crazy is I think the look at object is maybe a little bit too close. Let me just back off in space, maybe like 2. Yeah, because he was like looking very, very close. I think some of my values may be off for. I think what I need to do actually is I need to my y values are jumping when I cross this plane, so I need to look at my x value here. I am going to limit this. Let's see where that needs to be limited. Right around 0. So my minimum clamp is going to be -1 and 0. Right. That's a little bit confusing because I've definitely got my X stopping before I go across there. But for whatever reason, even though I cross it, I still get that jump in my Y. I'm not gonna know how to straighten that out. I just need to stay in here. But I want my my X value to be further out, my from range. Let me actually see here. -1 to 0. Actually, that's going to be -0.5 to 0.5. Let me do this. So -0.5 to 0.5. And my maximum value, I'm going to just drag that up into something that makes sense. And I may have that a little bit too strong, but you get the point. You can see how this is working. And I think that's going to do it. Again, these aren't necessarily setups or ideas that are amazing for put right into your production pipeline by any means, but again, it's an exploration of how to use some inputs that are sitting on your desk probably to control animation, to generate some new ideas. And I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you end up making anything, if you come up with something that's more useful than the goofy examples that I've been doing. I'd love to see them. You can reach me on Twitter, leave comments here on this video, and if you want to see more of this stuff, or if you have ideas for other more obscure things to explore in Houdini, let me know. Feel free to subscribe if you like to see more of this content. I appreciate it.